Hello, everyone. We're going to start the meeting of the Board of Selectmen on Monday, January 12th, 2015. Madam Clerk, would you lead us in pledge allegiance? And please remain standing for a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be noted that our former Governor Deval Patrick had ordered the United States and the Commonwealth flag to be lowered half-staff on all state buildings and town buildings in honor of our former United States Senator Edward W. Burke, who died on January 3rd, 2015, and also for an outstanding resident of our town, Mary Kay, who passed away, devoted to her family, to the town, and to her church. Thank you. On the agenda tonight, we'll be reading mail and what forth. Around 6:35, we'll be talking about the PMBC and the light department and the fuel facility replacement, library trustee staffing vacancy, C, Elder Human Services temporary on-call van drivers, D, conflict of interest, disclosures and determinations. Around 7 o'clock, we'll have input updates, public input, and members' updates. After that, we'll have the 2016 budget updates, operating budget, capital improvement plan. Around 7:50, we will reschedule the annual review of Selectmen's policies and regulations. We can't do that completely tonight because we don't have a full board. Followed by the town administrator, assistant town administrator for finance and budget, update on draft financial policies, adopt revised hiring policy and procedures, and after that, other business consent agenda. Keith, the mail.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, several items. First, we have a letter from the new governor, Charlie Baker, announcing an increase in, a release rather, of Chapter 90 funds, which was one of his campaign promises, and which was one of his first acts.
About that. Somebody actually followed through with something he said on the campaign?
How about that?
Amazing.
Followed by the hiring freeze. So, and
Someone's got to pay for it.
he's determined to find a way to close the $500 million budget gap that he's inherited. I think we should note, though, that not only what Governor Baker has said, but what the House and Senate leadership have said on Beacon Hill is that there will not be any cuts to local aid to make up for the budget shortfall at the state level this year. So that's good to see. We also have a letter in here announcing the award of 2 grants to the fire department under the SAFE program, the Student Awareness for Fire Education, $4,400, and then for the Senior SAFE program, another $2,800. So congratulations to the chief for obtaining those grants. Next, I included a newspaper article that had appeared in the Boston Globe over the last week or two, where I was pleased to see that among a list of transit needs that communities have, there were 2 that the Globe listed, not only in the text of the article, but in a map they prepared, which are important to Littleton. One is Fitchburg line improvements to service level, and also our Crosstown Connect initiative. So I was happy, in a very short list, I mean, it's a very long list of needs that are out there. The Globe article just covered a relative few, but 2 of them were of significance to us. And hopefully we can work to get some progress made on both of those initiatives. Next is a letter which I wanted to share with you. It's from the Mass Department of Transportation, and it's addressed to the Mayor of Gardner in his capacity as the chair of the Montechusett Regional Transit Authority that we're a part of. And MART has identified a deficit of $1.4 million in its budget. which will need to be addressed. I'm not sure how I volunteered or how I got into it, but I'm chair now of the Finance Committee of the MART Advisory Board, which will meet tomorrow morning to look at the administration's plan for closing that budget deficit. The other thing to know about the way regional transit authorities operate is that by statute, they have been allowed to simply roll their deficit over from one year to the next. Cumulatively, MART has had about $20 million in accumulated debt over the years. The law was changed this past year, though, to put some curbs on that, and that may or may not have impact on MART service. So it's something that we're going to have to, we'll keep an eye on.
In previous meetings, you had talked about possibly moving over to the Lowell Transit Authority. What's been the,
It, I think, is still something that we might want to explore if MART doesn't shape up a little. That the procedure to do so would be cumbersome, the way the law is written right now. It would require a ballot question where it would be essentially, shall the town of Littleton leave the Montechusett Regional Transit Authority, yes or no? We don't get to explain what that means. If there's not a rather robust public education effort, it would be difficult to know what that means. It doesn't say leave MART for Lowell. The statute says if you want to leave a transit authority, that's a ballot question. If you want to join one, that's a vote of the Board of Selectmen. So procedurally, it doesn't make sense. If MART continues to have problems that impact our service levels, I think it may be something that we'd want to seek legislative relief on by, having our delegation propose a change in the law to make it easier to leave MART. Because it would be difficult to leave because the way the law is written now, and we might want to have help from our legislators to make it easier to leave one for the
being on the
other.
Finance Committee, I would expect that you could keep us up to date as far as the finances of MART.
Yeah, I certainly can, and if
Appreciate that.
we would hope that they can fix them. We seem to have the full attention of the Mass DOT to make sure that MART does make progress, and so I hope that we will have good things to report about MART in the future, but I'm concerned.
Right, and some of the cases that would concern me is, the easy fix is let's go up on all our rates, and, that's
No, and
something that
it wouldn't be that. I think over the years, MART has made some business decisions which are,
He's trying to be kind.
which might have had,
A detrimental effect?
yeah.
Okay.
And so what I've advocated, and others on the Finance Committee, is to make sure that we had a chief financial officer who was very talented who left MART last year. And that it was important that the skill set that she had and the skill set, frankly, the sort of, I would call Bonnie level skill set that we are blessed with, the MART organization needs to have as well, in order for them to be able to make smarter business decisions.
Don't even think of it.
Don't, she couldn't take the cut and pay.
So do we can congratulate you that?
Well, I don't know. It's,
Let's wait until we hear a report how he
Yeah,
does.
yeah, we'll
This will be part of his report card.
we'll see. Next is, I've included a letter that went from the Kinder Morgan to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We've been getting regular updates from the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, Beverly Wood, who is coordinating the communities in the area who are affected by the proposed pipeline for the Tennessee gas pipeline proposal. We are not directly affected. However, every time I hear someone say that they're looking at an alternative involving existing rights-of-way, that's code for us, Route 2 or 495. So I've been monitoring those meetings. The official change thus far is that Kinder Morgan is proposing a route through southern New Hampshire as its primary route, proposed route in this area, but there is a northern Massachusetts route that will continue to be an alternative. And there are a number of open house meetings that Kinder Morgan will be conducting in the next month or two, and I'll be attending one of those to further keep an eye on it. Last is a letter from the town of Harvard, which I thought I'd just include in the packet. They are looking to lease public office space to house their town hall office while their building is undergoing renovations. I wish it could help, but we're just not. If we had the space, we'd probably be looking at converting it to affordable housing or a senior center or something else, but we can't help them.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to A, deals with the fuel facility replacement. It's an update. I think the PMBC is going to be involved in this. We have to replace our town fuel facility. Any update on that, how it's going to, was it just in case we need to vote to have the PMBC?
Yeah, a couple of things to say. First is that up until now, the management of the fuel facility replacement project has not involved the PMBC. We're not going to make that mistake again. But it had actually started out as a project within the Light and Water Department. Hopefully, as you know from the funding discussion we'd had, our hope had been that it would be fully funded within a $300,000 budget that was available to us from the electric department. That turned out not to be enough money. We went to town meeting for supplemental funds. We've got a total of $548,000. However, the bids that were received, the successful bid now, or the apparent low bid, I should say, upon review by Bonnie and Town Council and the Highway and the Electric Department, is not, the determination was made to reject that bid and to rebid. And Bonnie can explain a little more about that. But now that we're at that juncture and we're going to bid it again, we need to take advantage of the skill set that we have at the PMBC and
That's what they're there for.
assign them the project.
Yeah, there were some ambiguous or erroneous bid specifications within the final bid that was released. So after reviewing it with town council and Mr. Cloud, we decided that it would be in the town's best interest to rebid it. But at this point, having it assigned under PMBC, because they have the skill set available to guide the project through the proper municipal channels, with relation to public procurement, it would be the best interest to hand it over at this point.
Was the fee in your agreement with that?
Bonnie filled me in on what was going on. Yeah, we'll do it. It's our job. She gave me the rundown.
Thank you.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to assign the fuel facility replacement project to the Permanent Municipal Building Committee, PMBC, for oversight and project completion.
Second. Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes. Staffing vacancy for the Deputy Library Director.
My name is Sam Alvarez, I'm the new director of the library. Nice to meet you all.
Hello.
So the library is asking to restructure the current management structure of the library. At the moment, there's a director and 5 senior librarians. There's no person really in between that to really facilitate a proper management structure in the library. So we'd like to create an assistant director position. This position would help support the director to manage the staff, to attend conferences and workshops and represent the library at these workshops. This person would really help to support the library and the director and the staff in many different ways. I myself was an assistant director before I came here, and I helped my director to manage staff, to represent the library, to assist patrons, and with that position, you really have the authority of that title behind it, which is really helpful. This would be an internal hire. We would change one of the senior librarian positions into an assistant director position. We would not replace that senior librarian, so we would work with 4 librarians, senior librarians, and 1 assistant director. The duties of that senior librarian would be absorbed into this assistant director position. Financially, it would, we plan to cover it because the previous director was at a higher step than I am when I was hired, so there's a surplus currently in the salary budget to help cover the cost for the remainder of the fiscal year. And for next year, we would plan to lower the vacation coverage line of our salary budget to help cover the cost of the $3,000 at the moment. It's about $9,000 that we have in that line, and really it's too much. So this $3,000 can really help to be put to a better use, basically. So, any questions?
Wood, any questions? So level staffing,
Right, it's a level staffing,
budget neutral,
yes.
and essentially enhance the operation itself.
Correct.
So in the guise of, the board hasn't made any determination as far as level staffing budgets for 16 or mission budgets for 16, we haven't come out and actually said anything. Personally, I have no issue with the vacancy so long as we carry forward staffing budgets for FY16. I think based on what we're hearing of FY16's budget, it should be level staffing, not mission. So I'm okay with it so long as it's budget neutral and level staffing. Essentially, that's what it is.
I did look through the library's expenses for the last few years, and they have turned back salary dollars in each of the previous 3 fiscal years, so between 5 and 10,000. So I'm very comfortable that it can be absorbed. They've managed their vacation coverage budget very well.
Just my typo on the motion, I don't know why you had deputy on the brain, but the job title is assistant director, not deputy director.
Well, they did produce a job description that was reviewed by the personnel board and graded, and as you can see in your paperwork, it came out a grade 10. It was a well-done job description, and we had no issues with it.
I guess again, my only concern is what we're saying to the other department heads. Again, for fiscal year 16, it's my feeling it should be a level staffing budget year based on the numbers we're seeing and still not knowing what the school's going to do, waiting for their numbers. If that's the way the board feels, I would have no problem doing this as a level-funded, level-staffed, budget-neutral appointment.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, then you guys all right? All right. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to grant the library trustees' request for staffing vacancy review policy to fill a full-time benefited, and since this is an existing employee, the OPEB and insurance is all
It's already
neutral.
budgeted.
Very good. Vacancy review policy to fill a full-time benefited grade 10 position of assistant library director through internal posting and promotion from a position that would not be filled.
Seconded?
Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you, congratulations, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, this has to do with temporary drivers. And from what I understand, Pam, you can fill us in, but obviously you have some vacancies that might need to be filled. Is that what the intent is here?
It's not exactly vacancies. I have a recurring issue of, it's more like a scheduling problem. Not anyone has left, but they're not available. When I first took on the job, we had slack in the schedule. Still we're running 5 days a week, 2 vans, but some days we didn't run 2 vans. We only ran 1 van. It was much easier to schedule. Now I'm having difficulty with scheduling when I have to have 2 drivers. I have to have them for 5 days. No delicate way to put it, some of my drivers are a bit older, and so I've had issues like the driver last week that suddenly had to go in for surgery. Last year I had someone fall and break an elbow. Had someone hurt a hip. I'm continually in this position where I'm very stressed at trying to get the schedule met because we're just so close to the bone with people. And I guess the last straw was, I have a driver now who's on dialysis. And so that means they're not available 2 days a week because they're doing dialysis. They can still drive, but not on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it's like, she can't drive on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and someone else is out for 3 weeks because they're in the hospital. And so I see on the way over here that I was thinking, oh, all I need is for someone to fall down the stairs. So Keith and I have talked about this problem off and on for the last 8 or 9 months, how to address this. And what we keep coming back to is the idea that I'm very constrained in what I can spend. I could have 100 drivers, but I can only spend so much because I only run 2 vans and they run 5 days a week and there's 10 shifts. And we've come to this idea that I really need a pool of people that I can dip into when I have issues. I have a benefited driver, for example, who can be off, can be on vacation, bereavement, sick leave, whatever. And because all my drivers are part-time, they have a lot of control over their own schedule. You know, they're not expected to be available to me 40 hours a week. So I'm asking for the ability to have people in reserve, much like you would have a firefighter or a policeman that you could call up. Because not only do I have to go through the hiring process, and you know how long that can take to come here, get the approval, advertise, interview, make a selection, get the physical, get the drug test, and get a person hired. But then I also have to go through all the MART training. And they have to have wheelchair training, and they have to have defensive driving training. And those are done at MART's leisure. They don't do those one-to-one. They do those when they have a pool of people that need training. It can be a long process to get someone authorized to drive a van. I've tried looking in other directions. I recently put out a call to MART, and I asked if they had any drivers who could just pick up a few hours, just in essence be an on-call driver. No one. I've asked all the other COAs, and I'm limited. I can only ask COAs that have MART as their supplier, because, here we go, Keith, MART doesn't accept that an LRTA driver is qualified to drive their vans, even though they both use DOT for their standards. Again, none of the towns have anyone available. I asked Crosstown Connect, who does our dispatching and has lots of drivers and vehicles. Their drivers work the same schedules as our drivers. They're daytime drivers. And they've come back and said that they'd like to help me out, but they just can't. So I've come to the conclusion that I need my own pool. It doesn't have to be very big or very deep, but I do need to be able to have someone who's trained and ready to go when I need them. As it happens, I have an ex-EMT who was talking to me about how he'd like to drive a little bit. Not much. He's also got another job. So I have the potential to fill that position and have someone ready in the wings who would only be paid for the time that they actually are on the road, which would be when somebody else is off, so that person's not also being paid.
Now, is this fully funded?
Well, I'm constrained by the budget. I'd have to work within the budget, just like fire or police would have to work. It'd be my responsibility to keep us within the budget.
Since most of the drivers are not benefit eligible, when they're not working, they're not being paid. There is one that is benefit eligible, so it would allow for some flexibility when those other temporary drivers are not there.
Right. If the other part-time drivers that we have only get paid when they do a shift, but they're not available for one other reason or another, that this staffing level would allow Pamela to draw from other people to fill the shifts and pay them instead of paying the part-time person who is not able to cover the shift.
2 vans is 2 vans, right? I mean,
2 vans, 10 shifts.
right. 10 shifts is 10 shifts. You just want a pool, so when someone's out, you can fill those 10 shifts.
Right.
So budget-wise,
And if we didn't address it in this way, then we would find that the service was being impeded because we would have the call for the need for a driver to be operating the vehicle and no driver.
so I guess,
So this would give us a cadre of on-call drivers to call.
again, based on fiscal year 16, once this board makes a determination as regards to either level funding or mission, level staffing or mission budgets, this here is basically a level staffing, because you got 10 shifts, you're not looking for 12 shifts. You're not looking for 15 shifts, 10 shifts is 10 shifts.
Same amount of money,
Right.
same amount of service
staff.
level.
Okay, questions? All right, I move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to the staffing vacancy review policy to establish a predetermined staffing level for on-call temporary marked van drivers for the Elder Human Services Department at 6 positions.
Second?
Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Good luck.
Thank you
Very
very
important.
much.
Thank you.
Now I can sleep.
Not at the wheel.
Not at the wheel, right?
Very clever.
I could say
Well, no.
something, just get me in trouble.
Rolling right.
Okay, 2D deals with the Littleton Common Committee, and some of the members live within the district, or they work within the district, so we had to seek the determinations of the conflict of interest.
Right, we've had those members who live in or near the Littleton Common District, who work there, fill out the appropriate disclosure forms, and which town council assisted with, and we have the motion tonight for the board to act on.
Any questions, gentlemen?
Their interest is that they live where they live, and you knew that they lived there because you appointed them. So.
Move that the Board of Selectmen, having received and considered the disclosure of Littleton Common Committee members Joe Azalino, Jennifer Cameron, Katie Caruth, Linda Canetta, Nathan Whitney, as required by General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 19, vote 1 to determine that the financial interests described in said disclosures are not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services the town may expect from these employees. And 2, to authorize the chairman of the board to sign the determination portion of the disclosures.
Second.
Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
And then 4D2 is a conflict regarding a conflict of interest law determination regarding a full-time dispatcher who's also a call firefighter. And I'll say in the future, we're reviewing our hiring practices so that in the future, when we bring you a dispatcher appointment, we will also bring you this motion.
Perfect.
So,
Pretty straightforward?
Yep.
Ready? Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, subsection 20F, to approve Deputy Police Chief's request for the exemption of their form for personnel services in a part-time call or volunteer capacity with the police, fire, rescue, or ambulance department of a fire district, town, or any city within a population of less than 35,000 inhabitants for Brian Caldwell.
Second.
Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
thank you.
Now, one separate. Public input, anyone in public? Anything to say? If not, I'll go to members update. We'll start.
No, I have nothing.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a ZBA meeting coming up on Thursday, the 15th at 7:45. Part of the ZBA meeting is for Acton Toyota to expand their parking lot. They're requesting to pave over 1.26 acres of, right now, zone residential property. They have approximately 3 acres available. They're requesting 1.25 acres, 1.26 acres. That equates to their request of an additional 296 cars to be parked on that property. Now, once they do this one, they're gonna ask for the next one, I'm sure, and then the next one. So we have another 900 cars in town. This is, the town meeting, we said no more car dealerships. They just keep expanding, expanding, and expanding. This is not good for this town, so I'd ask everybody, go to the ZBA meeting on Thursday, 7:45, and let the ZBA know how you feel about another 300 vehicles being parked in the common. I'd also like to request this board to send a letter to the chair of the ZBA, if you feel the same way I do, to say that we are not in support of this zoning amendment also.
While I don't disagree with any of that, I wonder, can we actually discuss this and take a vote? Because it's public input, it's not an agenda item.
Well, I'm not asking for a vote. I'm not asking for a vote. All I'm saying is, I think the board should send a letter to the ZBA, the chairman of the ZBA. I'm not looking for a vote.
The board would have to authorize that. I think maybe we could each express our opinion, and that
We don't
certainly
need a
would
vote
get
to
back-
authorize that, would we, Keith? We don't need to authorize to send a letter, Alex. It's just a letter of,
It's close though, because it's a determination.
If it's a matter of, if you're communicating a policy position of the board, arguably you'd want, and it's not a, well, trying to see if, the policy position the board did take would, back for the November 2013
Correct.
town meeting, was to be in favor of the zoning amendment that passed. So
You do it
if
that
you,
way.
if you wanted to remind, you certainly remind, I think that we would not need a noticed vote tonight, that is with an agenda item and so forth, for us to cause a letter to go to the ZBA reminding them of the Board of Selectmen's support for that zoning amendment back in November 2013. And I just have to go back and
pull it
look at
out.
what the vote count was.
I think it was a
I think,
unanimous vote.
I think if we talk about it, then the town administrator would certainly have an idea of how to relay the message from the board.
I can certainly, as your town administrator, I can certainly communicate to the ZBA the prior position that the Board of Selectmen has taken on this matter, and would be happy to do so.
I'd be in favor of that. I have no trouble with it.
Absolutely.
That's all I have.
No,
Well,
just
we're
everyone should.
going to talk about it?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, to hear what some of the rest of us have to say about it, or?
Go ahead.
Okay. I was, noticed that I read it, and a couple of things struck me, that this piece of land is residential property now. It would be annexing a piece of residential property into the business district. And I was also a little concerned that, and I found out some clarifying information, that there might be a predisposition of some members of the ZBA not to look at this favorably, and I think this has to be looked at exactly the way it is, which is a piece of residential land that they would like to convert to, for their business purposes. This falls under ZBA, but I don't see any hardship shown here. I think what should prevail is the will of the town meeting and the voters who decided where those boundaries were.
Agree.
I wouldn't disagree at all. I think probably if we should go back to town meeting again for the town to make that choice to do it. So if we could send out some letter that would reflect that without taking a vote would be all set.
Yep, and the record does indicate from that town meeting, the Board of Selectmen was in support of Article 10, which passed by a 2/3 vote of town meeting, and I'll communicate that in a letter to the ZBA.
And everybody else, get out Thursday, 7:45. you as the residents of town have the loudest voice.
Okay, last thing under public input, I just wanted to say congratulations to Ethan Fultz. I had the pleasure and the honor on Saturday to be at his induction into the highest rank of Boy Scouting, the Eagle Scout, and it was a nice ceremony, and I just want to congratulate that young gentleman. The list of accomplishments, it's like, I think I read him at one point, it was 30-something accomplishments, 21 are required, but he had 30-something that were on there. So to Ethan, congratulations. Moving on, budget time, Bonnie. And FinCom.
Well, I don't have a tremendous amount of new information to share with you this evening, but I did want to give you an update of what I do have at this point. I am looking at a deficit that ranges somewhere between the amount of $319,000 and $900,000. Where that figure lands depends really on how the school budget is made up with the appropriated amount and their use of other available funds, like their circuit breaker funds or their school choice funds. We haven't received final figures yet. I know that the Finance Committee Chair did speak with the School Committee Chair, so I'm hoping that we'll get some information over the next week. I think it will be important to try and have another joint meeting on the 26th, if possible, to maybe just try and firm up this number. The difference from the last budget update, there was only really one account that changed, and that was for the Neshoba Tech account. We've lowered the estimate to be essentially level funded with what we had this year. We've received some information that the number of enrolled students is down by a few, so I'm thinking that the assessment will be somewhere in the same range that we had in the last fiscal year. I have not received any information from the state as of yet regarding fiscal 2016 state aid, so that is still level funded. And again, this is using a level staffing scenario on the town side. I haven't received all of the data yet for the school side, so we have a pretty big range there between the 300 and the 900.
I do have a note here from the school committee's chair, and it just says, unfortunately, the school committee will not have anyone available for the Board of Selectmen's meeting tonight. For the capital project list, which we'll be doing in a second, please note that the school department list is not prioritized yet. Our administrative team is finalizing the recommendation this week, and the school committee will vote at its meeting on Thursday. And their budget subcommittee, the subcommittee on budget will be meeting tomorrow, and it says, as always, the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom are invited, but they didn't put a time on this, so I don't know what time that actually is.
It's early, 8:30 a.m.
It's in 8:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Anything by the board? FinCom, on that part? Anything you want to, with the budget?
Waiting for more information.
You know something?
The 319, Bonnie, that's an increase from what the last report was?
No, it actually was, it's a decrease. It was about 419 at the last update, but we lowered the Neshoba Tech assessment.
When I looked this all over, we keep coming up against the same problem year after year, and I think Paul Levy alluded to it. We're going in knowing we don't have enough. And if we stick to the tax increase that we can have every year, and we look at the figure that's here, guess what? They match, and then we lose a little more. And we've done a lot of things over the years. We've really, really cleaned up the house as far as our fiscal management policies and a whole bunch of other things. But the bottom line in all of this is our biggest single cost is personnel. And we can talk about holding back raises, or we can do any of that stuff. We can talk about economic development, but the bottom line is still the bottom line. What is getting us every year is the fact that we have people we're obligated to pay, and I'm not saying we shouldn't. But we should look in the future about what people we do take on, because we have no obligation to anybody that we do not yet employ. And if we're going to get our hands around this issue, that's really the only place where there's enough money to do it. And that is a tough, tough thing to talk about. And how do you do it? Because everybody around here that works for this town works like mad. There's nobody slouching, there's nobody who's overpaid, there's nobody who should go away. So I keep coming back to the same point, well, let's find something, but let's hire less people. And we take care of the people we have, and when they leave one by one, we find a way to replace them with less. And if we're gonna get onto this budget, that's the only way we can do it. And that is the toughest thing to talk about. We avoid it, we look at everything else to try to save money, but that's where it is.
Again, Windows? Mr. Glavy?
Thank you. First of all, amen. It's the reality, and I think what we can be doing at this point in the process is, rather than exclusively looking at two things I was going to suggest briefly. One is, rather than just exclusively looking at level staffing and mission budgets, which has been stated by Alex most recently, that's not reality. We should be getting on the table what reality looks like sooner rather than later, number one. And number two, following up on Alex's point, it's true that the personnel costs, with no finger pointing at anybody other than the fact that it's just a reality that good people are expensive to keep and maintain, that we should be charging the departments and looking at ways going forward that some of those costs can be deferred by outsourcing or whatever other means there are. And I don't have anything specific in mind, but I agree completely. That's the reality we face every year, and this year, a $300,000 deficit in January. Yeah, we've looked at worse numbers than that, but the structural problem is not going away and proposes to get worse. So I'm in complete agreement with that, acknowledging that reality and taking a direction to address it.
And I think, if Paul was sitting here, he'd probably say something like this, but I think, the townspeople decide what level of service they want. And there seems to be an awful lot of discussion now about the steepness of tax increases, if you look at it historically. And if the townspeople want us to go the way they're going, then let's get that message from them. And if they want us to find a way to get a handle on this, let's take that message and do the hard things that have to be done to do that. There's two ways we can go here, because we're mere servants to what the townspeople tell us they want to do. And there's no way we can address this from a staffing point of view without having some kind of pretty serious impact on what we provide as a town, as town services. So I don't know how we do it, but we should hear their message. And we should hear whether they're comfortable with staying as we are, providing the services, doing whatever, or whether they really want us to take the hard look and make some cuts.
I have a question I need an answer for actually too, is that when we have new hires, do we have to offer the same benefits that we do the current people? How I'm thinking this, obviously if someone is hired, I don't want to take anything away, but in the future, if we were to hire, I think health insurance, I think we would pay 70%. Could that be changed? Could that be, for new hires, not be at 70%, but maybe, it says, I think in something I read in here, that the town meeting approved in, I think, 1974, that they approved it over 50%. But is that something we have to abide by?
Well, it's something that's in the collective bargaining agreements as they stand today, but it's something that would, could be negotiated through the process.
But it would have to go through negotiations. There was a hand up some.
Yeah, I just wanted to relay my experience with the town of Wayland, as well as Air and Chelmsford. The new employee starts as of such and such date, as you were getting to. They're no longer 75%, they're down to 70, and there's, different scales of where the employees fall. In Wayland, it was like 3 different rates. It was like 82% at such and such date, down to 75, down to 70, all new employees. So I think that's something I brought up earlier, that maybe we should look into negotiating the new contract to potentially save the town on what we pay for health insurance going forward on all new employees. Because as we're talking about, our revenues are not keeping up with our expenses, so I mean, where can we eliminate costs? I think benefits is a huge area, and we spend millions on benefits, so I think that's definitely an area to look at to save.
I think what we have to be very careful of is, and I for one am very loyal to the employees we have. We have great employees. They work really hard. I don't want to do anything that harms them. I want to keep them whole. They are who are keeping us in the kind of shape we are in. And we're not bad compared to some places. But I agree that our obligations ahead of us. When somebody comes in the door, if we can say, this is what you get, this is our package, and we can still provide our mission, that's where we should look. We should not look at people that have already put their service into this town and done such a good job for us.
But I wasn't saying that. I was just talking about new hires.
And to your point, as far as being negotiated, I thought with the reform, that the Insurance Reform Act of, what was it, 3 years ago, 4 years ago now?
That hasn't finalized. A lot of the components of that have not changed anything that we have in place.
The employer share is something that would have to be bargained, to be changed. The plan design, we can do without bargaining. We can do it through that group that.
Insurance advisory.
Yeah, but for changing the employer share would require, if it were to be.
I thought that was a part of the law, that they took the pressure off of towns to be able to do that.
One thing that was changed back, I think in 2010, is for new employees coming on from that point forward, your retiree benefits went from the 70% to 50%, which was the minimum amount. Again, for new employees coming in after 2010. So we have made some changes that should help us in the long run, but we still need to make more.
Were there any other lessons learned from other towns around us that came up in discussions? Chris, I know you mentioned a couple other towns there, and maybe there's something somebody else has done that we could...
Also, I think maybe what Jim was talking to was like the GIC, similar insurance policies that were out there that I think they eliminated whether you had to negotiate with the unions in town, that they actually, the Board of Selectmen could go out and negotiate basically a lower rate. I don't know whether that's what you were getting to or not. Did they remove that from the law though, Bonnie, that you don't have to negotiate with the unions as far as on going out and finding a GIC similar?
For us, the
No.
GIC was no bar.
Well, on plan design, we use, the changes that were made to the law as they affect plan design only required us to convene a
Insurance advisory.
public employee committee, I think, which was comprised basically of the same folks who were on our insurance advisory committee. And the task was to that group to say, here's our proposed changes in plan design. Now, can you find us some different, design that saves us the same amount of money? And if not, then we would go forward and implement those changes. We worked closely with all of the affected employee groups way before we reached the point of invoking that language, but ultimately we were in agreement, this was a couple of years ago, that the plan design changes that needed to be made to help us lower costs, the Board of Selectmen were able to vote to make those, but it was with the unanimous recommendation of all of the affected employee groups. Even though we didn't have to reach agreement, the dynamic was that the Selectmen could do it unless the group could come up with a way to achieve similar savings.
I think the truth of the matter with us and the town and its health insurance plan is we do pretty well when it comes to everybody else that's out there, as far as managing the costs and staying on top of these things.
You have a suggestion that came up from the auditor. It's kind of on the other way because it's a more long-term thing, is about the OPEB benefits, right? Is that we incorporate those whenever you hire somebody new. It's not only their current salary and benefits, but it's also, their pension benefits get incorporated in there. So it's actually, from the short term, it's more of a hit. But longer term, you're taking that in and you're making decisions based on what it's really costing to take this new employee on. It's a more realistic view of it.
To consider that at the time of hire, when you're
Yeah.
considering hiring
Yeah,
somebody.
exactly. And just
That
start,
number
start
goes into the.
start paying it away,
Right,
start
so
putting it
that
away
it-
as part of the
so
hire.
that you'd never have a level-funded staff person, because you're taking part of it for the salary, and the rest of it you're putting away towards OPEB, but you're making that decision now
Yep.
to help deal with a future cost.
Well, just,
Yeah, and
yeah,
that
it's
is.
a real decision, what it's costing to hire that person.
And I think it's also fair to say that places that have been stingy about replacing employees and taking care, or have been restricting this sort of thing, the service levels are a little more difficult. If you walk into a town hall and find out that there's a lot of hours it doesn't operate, and that's inconvenient, to say the least, and for some of us, it's pretty inconvenient, because we're trying to hold our jobs and do all that. So we've been grappling with this for so many years, but we just keep marching. Every year, I look at every year, it's about the same. We have this, the taxes, we have a 2.6% increase in staying where we are. Just if we we change nothing, it costs us 2.6 more. And we have the ability to tax at 2.5. And people, some people, higher than 2.5 every year after year after year. That's why I say, townspeople probably ought to be part of this dialogue and tell us where they want to be. Where do they want to be? Because there'll be a big trade-off if we start losing employees, because that relates to service.
But do you think some of it too is that we're not also promoting, because it's not just all level, like we have more fire, we have more fire staff now than we had before, the ambulance response times are better, we have more on council, the council on aging or health and human services. I mean, there are some things that we have more of now that people are getting. It's not just, it keeps going up for the same level of service. People are expecting more and getting more services as well. And that's the discussion, right? You gotta have both. It's like, we're not the federal government here, it's a real world, and so if you want more services, it's going to cost, and that's the discussion. It's not, do you want your taxes to go up, because the answer is always no, or do you want more services, because the answer is always yes.
Good point. And that's one of the problems with growth, normal community growth. With that growth comes growth in expectations of services and the quality of services from the government. If you go back to a town that has 2,000 people in it, or 1,000 people in it, they're pretty self-sufficient people. They don't, town hall is open on Friday, okay? And, there's, part of this is perfectly natural. We're a growing community. There's a lot of stuff infusing into our town, and a lot of residents want these levels of service. But somehow we have to get it all contained.
I think it's going to be important over the next few weeks to really nail down that true deficit number. I think the 319,000, that's based on a number that I have in for the school appropriation. That's half of what the request is. So that might be low. The 900,000 might be, the number that it's at. Until I can really nail that down, I'm not able to give you a menu of full comprehensive options for you to review on how you want to balance the budget.
Look how far off we are. Because if we asked all the department heads here, the finance committee, everybody that's involved in providing services to town, if money wasn't a factor, we'd be doing a mission budget. Well, that puts us 1.3 million out of line
Right.
at that time, just to do what we think needs to be done. And to provide the services we think we want to do. And every year, we're back at this level staffing budget, and, we still have a deficit, and, we're not gaining with a level staffing budget, we're not gaining anything. We're treading water.
We'll move on to the capital movements plan presentation.
Okay, so this is more of an informative presentation rather than asking you to make any decisions. I just wanted to be able to give you a view
Well, we
of,
can ask questions.
you can absolutely ask questions, but this is more just to present the requests as they stand today. So for 2016,
Mhm.
number of
Yes.
years.
Yes.
Maybe I'll try this.
And this 2017.
Yes.
It's not looking like it wants to go.
Okay. We try.
Need a battery.
Yeah, nothing for me.
Turn it on.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
That would work.
That might help.
The on-off switch.
That's why we pay him that money.
You don't want the battery to run down.
So for 2016, what we have in total requests today is $2.8 million in capital requests. And for available funds for capital, not that we have to spend all of the available funds, because I know that that has been mentioned before, but we do have available $1.9 million for capital. So there's a variance of almost $960,000 over the requests. So this gives you an idea of where the available funding is coming from. We have $870,000 coming from our undesignated fund balance, which is in compliance with the financial policies. And we have just over $1 million in accumulated debt service reductions. So that equals the $1.9 million. This does not include any CPA funding that might or might not be available. So this is just within the general fund and the undesignated fund balance. So I wanted to show you a comparison of where we're looking at for the next few years and where we are this year. So undesignated this year, we spent $872,000 on capital and $551,000 from retired long-term debt. We also had another $297,000 that came up this fall from snow and ice funds that was not expended. So for fiscal 15, we spent just over $1.7 million on capital. For fiscal 16, at this point in time, we're looking at $870,000, the same amount from undesignated. We're also looking at $682,000 from long-term retired debt because we have a little bit coming off every year. We're also looking at some savings in the short-term debt account because we had planned on spending some money on roadway short-term debt that is not needed for fiscal 2016. It will be needed for 17, but it will not be needed for 16.
And that's built into the budget currently?
It is. So if we're not going to use it, it can't go into the operating budget because I'm going to need it in the next year for the debt service again, but it would be available for capital. So it's a one-time kind of blip that's available. So that gives us the $1.9 million. I don't know what the snow and ice funding will do as of this early date, but if there are any unexpended funds, then we would have that available at a later date.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask questions as we go. I know that the fiscal year 2016 is when we had a discussion here, the board had a discussion in regards to the fire department and the new station to start the process. So I see nowhere in any here, we had talked about 2016 getting the design done and then moving when the, possibly when the high school and some other debt comes off, that's a way to fund it.
Correct.
That being said, what is the debt that's coming off now? You know, the increase in the debt service,
So
long term.
the increase in the long-term debt is from that 551 to the
Right,
682.
but what is it that came off the rolls? Do we know?
Oh, I
Just-
can't, I know it exactly, but I don't have it in front of
Okay.
me. But I would be able to tell you by
But
account.
the amount that's going to come off, say, by, was it fiscal 2020?
Would be
Will
the-
be enough to pay for the fire
Okay.
station, for which we design in 2016, fiscal 2016, and do the construction in
Correct.
2017.
Correct.
But by the time the debt is
So,
due.
so the $111,000 is just miscellaneous projects that
It's
came
other-
off of, coming off of that? Okay.
Reductions in annual debt payments or maybe smaller debt service issues that are paid off.
Okay.
But I have the listing in the financial spreadsheets.
Yep.
Chairman, my points are right in line with what Jim's raising, so while we're on these slides, I just want to confirm then too, because the same questions will come into my mind. I pulled out a memo from a year, roughly a year ago, same scenario. And it's not a contradictory, but it does show, growth in the request levels. But at this time, it was actually a November 27th memo, the requests were at about 1.8 million, and the anticipated expenditure funds available were 1.17 million or whatever. So, some monies become identified later in the process, right, Bonnie? That, that
Correct.
always happens. We had the one term, what's expected to be a non-repeated item with the snow and ice. And now, as you say, we got another short-term debt, one-time thing. I just get concerned that if that's an opportunity, in keeping with our policies, to spend on one-time items that we may have been pushing off, fine, but is that maybe, should we be considering our bigger projects and priority, and do we have any risk of those not being able to be funded by spending all this on one-term funding? Is there a lot of thought been given to that yet, or not? Because I'm following the line of debt coming off the books, matched up with the schedule that you laid out in December of 2013. It sounds like everything's on track for that, and there's a bit of a bump this year, which allows for some more capital spending without throwing that plan off track. Is that a correct read?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, and one more question to that. In discussions with the policy group and talking about facilities and all that, there was discussion about, when we have this one-time $350,000, maybe this is the year to start to bank that away for the facilities. Because we know, being on that group last year, and it's built into the 1.5 or 1.7 that we spent last year. There was $540,000 at the schools, and we did a lot of good stuff happened for $540,000. But coming down, 5 years from now, it may be $800,000 instead of the $540 that's built in, the $350. So it's something to think about. We had talked about it with the FinCom, with the Board of Selectmen. Something we should probably think
Yeah,
about
with
this
the
year.
idea that, for example, from those numbers, if you view the 350 as non-reoccurring, then you could put it into
Correct.
say, a
Capital
stabilization fund.
fund.
Right, yeah.
Well, there was talk about the stabilization fund, and then there was talk about the facility fund, and the way the capital stabilization is, you need a vote to get it out. So, I think if we have a little bit better leeway for the facility fund, so that we don't need, it's in there for the facilities, period. If we're gonna spend it, it's gonna be spent on, a new water heater, or whatever the case may be, whatever is needed for the facilities. And we have the ability, through this process, to pull money out. That's-
Never a bad idea to maintain buildings, but it's also never a bad idea to save money. So,
Right, I get that.
put it in the bank.
This is just to show you where the funding
Got
is
it.
coming from. So
Good
it
time to
is
talk about it,
available,
though.
it's, and again, for fiscal 2017, it's just the next year's estimate. Again, we don't know snow and ice until after we go through the season, so. Okay, so the major projects timeline. So if there are 2.8 million in capital or one-time projects requested, we looked through them. We need to identify from the requested items what may be new construction or major renovations. Just in looking at them, maybe the Long Store reassembly at 300,000 could be considered a major renovation, which would qualify maybe for debt service issue, or CPC funding, or some other funding source. And there's also the facility study recommendations. There's a request for 427,280 of the million, almost $1.3 million in items that were recommended from the report, but
Where did you get the 427 from?
that came from PMBC, the
Okay.
November
Because
meeting.
that group has not met yet that we put together last year.
Yeah, this is the number that was referenced at the all-day budget hearing
Okay.
from PMBC. And I know that they are meeting this week to kind of maybe go through that list again and make sure that it's in an area that
Right, I'd like to
Be viewed.
reconvene that group that sat down the last year.
Mr. Fian, do you?
The building committee is meeting this Wednesday night to discuss exclusively the 427,000 and to see what exactly we need to do and may be able to pair out. And regarding the group that Jimmy's describing, we've also discussed getting that together real soon as well.
Very good.
But that is the amount that I have currently kind of earmarked for the plan.
It was 454 last year.
Also involved with that is when we meet Wednesday night, the school department will have someone there. Steve Mark will be there to review some of the school department items that we have that we, again, we may be able to let go for now, and then what we have to do.
Yeah, so long as decisions that are, that group, we had somebody from the town side, school, Board of Selectmen, PMBC, so that was a good, diverse group that we literally, we went through that whole list and said, that's a good project now,
And
the
Steve
fire
Moore-
alarm system in the historical building works, the Houghton building works. Why should we replace it if it's functional?
Steve Moore kind of drove that group
He
last
did?
year, and he will be getting everybody together again.
Fantastic.
soon.
Everybody.
So the timeline. So the board is going to need to decide over the next few months what items that are requested that should be in the plan. Should, just because we have 2.8 million in requests doesn't mean that maybe everything belongs in there. You need to identify what items are a priority, what items could be funded by CPA funds, and we should have a prioritized list, really in draft format by the end of January, in order to have us start recommending a funding plan for it, to implement it. The warrant will close in March, so that doesn't leave a whole lot of time to really pare down those items with your regular meetings scheduled. And then we'll have a spending plan presented to the May 2015 town meeting. So the capital requests, what do they include? They include equipment, vehicles, equipment, repairs to either facility, so any major building and maintenance repairs, infrastructure projects, new building planning, or other one-time non-operating expenses. And a good example of that is the master planning expense. It's not really an operating budget, it's kind of a short-term project that needs to be done. So in summary, you can see the listing by department in the items total requested. So for police, we have 171,000, fire, 682,000, highway, 381,000, schools, 613,000, park rec and community ed at 53,000, library at 3,000, cemetery at 60, facility, which would include the PMBC's list at 795, and other non-operating, which is the master planning at 100. So that's the makeup of the 2.8 million.
Ronnie?
Yes.
And I know you sent all this information, I haven't had a chance to go through it. But the fire doesn't include anything for the new fire station, though, correct?
No, we'll go through
Only
the,
the things to put in it.
so we'll just go through quickly by department, but the police department is requesting 171,000 total. 102,000 is to replace 2 marked vehicles. You can see one's a 2011 Ford Crown Vic with 111,000 miles, and a 2010 Dodge Charger at 105,000 miles. Both would be proposed to be replaced with 2015 Ford Interceptors. The existing equipment would be auctioned off. There's also 43,000 to replace an admin vehicle, which would replace the 2005 Toyota 4Runner with 141,000, and again, that equipment would be auctioned off. There's 10,000 to maintain the public safety radio system maintenance system, which is over $1 million worth of equipment. So spending this 10,000 is a valuable, I think it already paid for itself this year with a repair. And then there's 6,000 to do the cruiser maintenance, mostly it's tires to replace on the vehicles.
Of these, are there any that we're contractually stuck to at this point? Is
No,
it?
we're straight line purchasing. We've gotten rid of the leases. The leases were not financially beneficial to the town at all. Fire equipment, 682,000. 15,000 is for the annual maintenance and repair for the larger apparatus. This account can only be used for repairs and maintenance of the equipment. There's 12,000, which is part of the annual program to replace their protective turnout gear. Rather than spending 60,000 at a whack, we do about 12,000 annually to keep the equipment being cycled through. $550,000 to replace engine 2. This will replace the 98 engine 2 and a 2002 rescue truck with one combination vehicle that would accommodate all the equipment, and it's part of the fleet reduction plan for the department. There's $34,000 requested to replace engine 3, the brush truck, and it would be replacing it with a 1994 with six-wheel ATV equipment with a trailer. Engine 3 would be auctioned. There's $12,000 for a brush skid unit, which would be used with one of the pickup vehicles, which holds 125 gallons of water and the hose line needed. There's $44,000 for a deputy command vehicle for the deputy chief, and a Ford Interceptor type vehicle would be purchased. It would be in addition to the fleet. The existing pickup being used by the deputy would be used with the skid unit. And there's $15,000 for the replacement of 3 thermal imaging cameras. The existing equipment is outdated, but as far as I know, it's still functional at this time.
On that thermal imaging, is there any type of life expectancy of that equipment, Chief?
They've been averaging roughly about 10 to 12 years. We just acquired 2 new cameras, and it replaced 2 of them. One of them that had failed, and the other was intermittent. We kind of used them as a trade, and that was done through a. We kind of acquired them through a DEP fine from a company in town.
10 years and something like that would be pretty much max, obsolete after one, the way the industry's going, but 10 years of useful life expectancy.
From here, we move on to the highway department, and there's $381,000 requested in equipment. $15,000 for major equipment repairs, and again, this is for their larger apparatus. It can only be used for equipment repairs. $25,000 is to do the frame rail replacements on the 1990 Mack. This happened earlier, or it was discovered earlier this fiscal year, so this moved up in priority just over the last few months. This is a heavily used piece of equipment, too.
Is that the one that was involved in that crash boom day?
I don't know. So it might be more than that.
One moot point.
Maybe the
Well,
insurance took care of it.
insurance, exactly, there you go.
There's $150,000 for a backhoe replacement. This replaces a 1992 John Deere with the existing equipment to be auctioned.
I thought he was gonna move the one he has down the dump and that one.
Right, and that one's,
I got
yes, that's the 1992,
Gotcha.
so. There is a $66,000 request for a mini excavator with a trailer, which would replace a 1989 John Deere 570 grader. That equipment would be traded in towards it. There's $18,000 for a forklift, a refurbished forklift, so this wouldn't be a new vehicle, it would be in addition to fleet, but it would be a used one. And it would be used for deliveries and assisting with the plows and repairs to vehicles. $62,000 for a batwing mower, which would be replacing a 1997 mower. It's one of their frontline mowers, so it gets used heavily. Oh, sorry. Thought I hit it. $9,000 for a flatbed for the hook truck, and it would just be the purchase of a body for use with the existing vehicle. That would better assist in moving the equipment. $17,000 for a mini sidewalk paver. This would be in addition to the equipment to allow the town to better maintain the sidewalks. And $18,000 for a used road paver, also in addition to the equipment, allowing the town to better maintain smaller stretches of roadway repair that are needed. The schools is not in priority order, as Mr. Knox read earlier. They're going to be going through that this week, so I apologize, but it's not in priority order. $40,000 for Russell Street playground equipment.
I thought we did that last year.
No, we did Shaker Lane.
Oh, Russell Street, Chico. Yeah, okay.
$30,000 for the high school lockers in the boys' locker room. $40,000 for the high school library for the video broadcast capability. $25,000 in fencing at the high school fields around the dumpsters and the field areas. $20,000 for handicapped accessible doors at the high school and Shaker Lane buildings. $25,000 for Shaker Lane card access system. And $50,000 for the same system at the high school.
And I'll ask the same question. I thought last year during our capital improvements, there was some, this was included too.
It was requested, but it was not funded. There were also some security
Cameras
upgrades
and
that were funded.
Okay.
So
So
these were
that
not
this
part of
card
it.
access piece was not.
Was not part of it,
cameras.
no. There's $35,000 requested as the second payment of a 3-year agreement for teacher laptop lease agreements. We didn't fund this in this manner last year, so I didn't, I don't know if they paid the first year's installment out of their operating. I need to get the details on that. But in any case, there's a request for the second of the 3-year agreement. $45,000 for Chromebook computers and equipment. $10,000 for MacBook Airs as replacements and additions. $10,000 for high school technology, the replacement of existing technology equipment. And $25,000 for system-wide technology equipment to replace some maybe non-computer type of issues like cameras, televisions, broken projectors. We have $75,000 for the parking lot lights to replace them with the LED lights, and the return on investment on that is estimated at 28 months. $14,000 for improvements to the high school HVAC circulating pumps, again with a return on investment of 23 months. $6,000 for the school freezers to replace the evaporator motors and controllers with a return on investment of 28 months. $45,000 for retrofitting a high school classroom for life skills. And $15,000 to replace some carpet at Shaker Lane. $20,000 in custodial equipment, particularly floor care equipment and maintenance lift. $27,000 for auto scrubbers at the high school and middle school.
What's an auto scrubber?
Right.
Driving around.
Oh, right, yeah,
Big Zamboni.
I was going to say the
The mini Zamboni.
I gotcha.
$24,000 in cafeteria equipment at the Russell Street School, and it's, tables and chairs. And, let's see, $20,000 to paint and repair at Russell Street, the doors and the gym walls. $12,500 for the Russell Street Gym basketball backboards.
So my only comment to this would be, we should meet with the PMBC, have that group. They got $427,000 for facilities. A lot of these, I think, are deemed facilities.
I think
Work our
that
way through it.
this list originally started out much higher, and some of the items were already incorporated into the $427,000. So there might be more that need to be, but I know that there were some already added. Okay, Park and Rec. There's $53,710 requested. The first is a feasibility study and design for soccer field development for the parcel located behind the Russell Street School track, 2.5-acre parcel. And that would cover feasibility, survey, and design work. The second one is $10,500 for general facilities and ground equipment maintenance, which would cover the Long Lake Park, the beach, Bay Park, and other areas maintained by Park and Rec that aren't funded by usage fees. This is a little bit less than last year's, or this year's appropriation at $15,000, so it's a little bit of a change.
So those are, I'm sorry, that last one though, those are like upgrades or enhancements? It's not just routine maintenance, right?
It is routine maintenance. It's items that might come up because of a playground failure, if there was a piece
So
of
it's not an
equipment that
every
was
year
not-
thing?
No, it's an annual. It can only be used on the Park and Rec facilities. So if there were a problem at the beach, at the boathouse, for example, rather than requesting a reserve fund transfer, they would use this account for it.
Okay, so it's still just a general fund for them to have available to use as things come up, okay.
So they don't know exactly to that question what exactly they do with it, because being a little selfish, the docks are broken and they've been broken for a while, and it'd be great if we could fix those docks. That'd be awesome. So we could find out what they're gonna do.
Sounds like a request to me.
Well, but it looked nice and we'd
I'll
use it.
send an email.
Right? Okay, good.
The next item is an annual for the library, $3,000 to replace furnishing. They have, a lot of upholstered furniture that gets damaged and needs to be replaced.
There's a bunch of cons that would love to reupholster it for them.
Cemetery, we have 60, almost 61,000 requested. 4,900 is for a mower replacement. Craig would like to trade the mower that he has in on a newer model that would be more efficient for the type of work that they're doing with the cemetery area. The existing mower would be traded. They're also looking to replace the HVAC system at the cemetery building site. This has been kind of out there for a few years, and it's starting to become a problem.
You know, it would be interesting on that one, the school committee found a way to figure out ROI on replacing the HVAC, if they maybe, it'd be interesting to know what that was for theirs as well. And the cost is really, it's double than the high school.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Is that the roof situation probably? Okay, gotcha.
Freezes.
And 31,000 for backhoe repairs or refurbishment for a 1995 John Deere. So it's almost 20 years old. Facility related, we have 795,000 in requests, 300,000 for the long store reassembly, 50,000 for historic cemetery restoration, 427,000 identified for facility study recommendations, to include some of the school ones, 6,000 for the fire station modular building lease, which is annual until we address the fire station.
We're committed to that. We have to do that.
Yep. And 12,000 for police carpet replacement and paint. So those are the facility items. Some of these, again, as I mentioned before, may be eligible for CPC funding, and we can come up with a recommendation, for the next meeting for that. Non-capital, but non-operating. We have the 100,000 requested for master planning services. This is kind of building that account up. We have 113,000 in there now, so this would add to that.
Oh, it was like 150.
It was going to be
No, it
150
was going to be
within the fuel
150, but we
facility.
had to scale it back at November town meeting to pay for the fuel facility.
It's at 150. So just some other pressures. Yeah, this isn't fully funding everything in the facility study, and I know that the group is going through to really figure out what needs to be done out of that study, but in any case, it isn't fully funding that. Future building projects, we need to, continue planning for the library. Any changes that might come up with the library, the senior center that was being discussed, recreation needs. The fire station's already in the plan, but obviously that's on the horizon. And, we need to just make sure that we're continuing to fund the facility and equipment maintenance to be proactive so that we don't have catastrophic failures. That's it.
Questions from the board?
Keep discussion.
That's our first go at it, by the end of January, you're saying?
If the board is agreeable, I'll come up with just a draft for you to start working on at the next meeting of what you might want to look at for a funding scenario, and then you can.
So we could look at that 2 weeks from tonight.
Well, what I'd like to say I guess it doesn't matter. Well, it does. I'd like to sit down with that facility group prior to a list being, because if we shift from the school especially to facilities, back and forth, at least that'll give us a better idea. That's a big chunk, $680,000 for the schools.
Be helpful.
So I'm just curious how we go about prioritizing some of this. I was just running through my head, and how would you, for instance, you might put life safety things first, and then contractual things have to come first, obviously, we're in there, and then life safety and all of that stuff, and the problem with that is some worthwhile projects don't get funded.
Those were the standards that were used for the
Right.
facility.
Right.
Those standards were not applied across all the capital requests, though, for various, which includes all the equipment that various departments need. I think what Bonnie had done last year is to sort of look at, since our departments have prioritized their own requests, that we sort of took what the top tier was, as a first cut, which are the highest priority from our departments. Add all those up and see what number do you get. And that's at least how we went through all of the budget requests.
And then I think we left the facility amount, we put the amount in there, but let the committee determine what was a priority in that listing.
I think one of the comments you had in here really speaks to a strategy that, we've always felt we should do and can't do. But, when we delay equipment, major purchases, fire trucks, backhoes, whatever it is, in the end, we pay more. By the time we get done putting 20,000 in here, 20,000 there, and the price went up 15% in that period of time, we end up paying more if we can't be proactive somehow. There's not enough money to be proactive, but where we can, we should try to be. Because down the road, we're saving money when we do that. But I think that last statement you put in there, that's a good statement.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 5, Selectmen's regulations and policies.
This was an annual ritual that we scheduled and then put off, and in part waiting for for a full board to be constituted. The board's policy is adopted a year ago was to say that as soon as the new board is seated in May, after the election, that you would go do an annual review of budget. We pushed that off until after the special election. The summer ended up being a lot busier than we thought it would be, so we were going to put this off until later, and we never got back to going through the board's policy. So I wanted to put it back on your radar screen. As was noted before, it is the policy to actually do your amendments when you have a full board. I think, notwithstanding that, if there were particular items you wanted to start identifying for further consideration later, you could certainly do that much tonight, or you could just table it for a future meeting.
I think the point here is, the working group on these policies and guidelines, if, that's not going to be part of this review. This is just the existing policies online, right?
Right, it's what's in your policy.
Correct.
Compilation, and, is there any fine tuning you want to do with those? And actually, what I think what the point of doing an annual review was so that each new board would take the act of adopting the old board's compiled policies as its policies as well, at least by acknowledging that there were those policies there. And until, some of these were taken a decade or more ago, and they, in fact, constitute the policy of the Board of Selectmen until you vote to change it. So you really ought to
So we've
look
got
and
another
see
2
what's in
weeks
there.
before our next meeting?
Yeah.
And how's that agenda looking so far?
It'll
This may take
be,
some time.
I think we'd have the time on that agenda. It will largely be focused on budget, though it will largely be.
Capital,
Hopefully, we can,
Get something from the
get the
schools.
school committee here, or hopefully see something from them. That would be the highest use of the board's time, if we could do budget stuff next. But I think you'd have maybe half an hour to devote to this as well.
I mean, it's a take-home, it's a homework thing, really.
Yeah, it's only 199 pages.
Yeah, I've seen it and read it, not much.
So if you wanted to
What date is it?
schedule this, that's the 26th,
You okay with that?
January.
26th?
I mean,
Get it done?
Yeah.
January 26th? All right, move that the Board of Selectmen vote to reschedule here we go. Vote to reschedule the conduct of its annual review of Selectmen's regulations and policies to 1/26/15.
Second.
moving in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Draft financial policy update, CPA, TIF, group health and retirement reimbursement.
This is just an update on some things that, that we've been working on, some of it with the financial policies working group, and some things that I suggest that we refer to that group. First, on the Community Preservation Act appendix, we did have a joint meeting with FinCom and Selectmen back on December 16th. That was to be followed up by a meeting with the Community Preservation Committee, which I did participate in, along with the chair of the FinCom on the 30th of December. From my observation, the CPC reacted very favorably to the proposed set of policy guidelines, the idea of adopting a blended CPA policy that starts with the 1% surcharge and a plan of spending that the CPC itself comes up with, and then on top of that, you look at the potential use of other municipal funds. And so the next step was going to be to go back to the facilities, to the Financial Policies Working Group, which is scheduled for tomorrow night. So I wanted to share with you the status of the current draft and that feedback. The next item that I put in this packet is my first cut at a proposed policy on tax increment financing. It had been one of the board's tasks after our November town meeting to come up with a draft policy. You assigned it to the Economic Development Committee. They declined your request, and so nevertheless, we need to start from somewhere, so I drafted a policy, which I would suggest, if it's not going to go to EDC, that it be forwarded to the Financial Policies Working Group for review. I have circulated the draft document to the EDC and to FinCom and the Financial Policies Working Group, and as well as to the board and to staff. I think there's still plenty to talk about in that TIF policy, but I think it gives us a starting point for discussion. I took quite a bit of time to actually chronicle how tax increment financing has worked out in this town over the last several years. I was struck just by some of the numbers that I had to track down from the Mass Office of Business Development, but I think it helps to see how the dynamic has shifted between this town and the state on the TIF policy. That, for example, IBM, for its $63 million investment, got a state investment tax credit of $3.1 million. Invest 63 million, get 3 million in a state benefit. Compare that to Potpourri Group under the new rules, which for the $49 million investment for the facility and equipment, they only get $325,000 in the state investment tax credit. So 1/10 of what the state had given for a slightly larger investment from IBM a few years ago.
So the burden comes.
So the burden, yeah,
Back to
so
the
the
town.
burden is shifted. That was just hit me in the face where to go from 3 million to 300,000 as what the state would come up with as its benefit, sort of shows how the dynamic in that has changed.
Get rid of TIFs, we won't need a policy.
Why did
You got my
those tax
comments.
credits go
Yeah,
down?
We went back and forth
so
about that,
much?
but I think it's a good opportunity to
Why did
look
the
at the
state
areas
tax credit go down
we
so
want to
much?
encourage.
They don't like us.
I mean, for us at this point, given the state's sort of backing away from it, it's a tool we need to encourage the business development we want in this town. And so we had designated a few areas where this could happen, but in the process of this, maybe we ought to look and see if we want to look at those areas, expand them or constrict them or whatever it is, but areas that we would spell out there where we'd even consider somebody's request for tax incentive finance agreements.
Did you have something to go off of this, or is this all your work?
I borrowed I used the format here that I developed for the CPA policy, but what I lifted was section, the only part that I lifted was section 2, develop rating system, which is something that the town of Barnstable could come up with. But the rest of it, I just tried to chronicle what I thought a good policy would look, a good procedure would look like here, so. And the tough part, though, is frankly, the rating system, which it was easy to, relatively easy to chronicle what the steps are, to show what the numbers work out to be with the various TIF agreements that we've had. But, and as I say, that was eye-opening to just see how the program has shifted over the years, and what we don't know, and we'll have to watch as well, is how the Economic Development Incentive Program and other state programs fare under the new administration, too. And they may have different priorities.
One of the things I really liked about this, Keith, is you started where we started and came through. So there's a lot of people now that don't recall specifically what the IBM agreement was all about. As time goes on, historically, we're going to lose track of that. And this puts it down. So everybody can go back and get a refresher 101 on this is how we got where we are today. And I really like that about the report. So.
Thank you.
The next.
And then the next ones, well, I was on a roll with policy. Steve Venuti had shared with me some work products. One is on updating our policy on group health and life insurance coverage for active employees and retirees. And what's included in here, the third item, is a rather longer, it's 6 pages of a new proposed policy which compares to a page and a half of an existing policy. I think it would be best for that review to go through our financial policies working group for its feedback. And the second one, or the final one rather, on retiree health insurance reimbursement policy, that one I wanted to bring to your attention because it concerns me that there's a state law which was passed as part of the changes in group health a couple of years ago, which says that for an employee who retires, for an employee whose service is in multiple jurisdictions, let's say they work in 2 different towns over the course of their career, the community where they retire from, where they get their retiree group health benefit, the law says that community is to then bill the other community for its share of the retirement obligation. We pay every one of those bills that we get, and we have been paid by only 1 or 2 of the other maybe dozen communities that we send bills to. And there's something wrong with this picture. Frankly, I would not suggest that we fix it by violating the law and not making good on what our obligation is to pay it, but I think that as a community that does pay its bills when we get them, we're in a good position to raise our head a little higher and maybe grab the attention of our state legislative delegation and say, look, you know that bill that we sent to the city or town of, and I won't mention it here, but when we send a $10,000 bill and we get told, yeah, we got the bill, we have no intention of paying, that's a concern. And so we need to, and it's the law. The law says that the community that retires them is allowed to bill the other communities. And we And when we, as I say, when we get those bills from others, we pay them. And when we send them out, we get either no response or we get a negative response in far too often. But I'd like to, but just by discussing it here and addressing it in sort of a policy of raising the consciousness about the need to, there's no reason why we should even have to think about going to small claims court against another community to collect an amount that's owed us. It seems to me that if the law says that one community is to repay the other, the state should be administering the whole thing through the cherry sheet charges, so, which, we plug in all of this information into a state database anyway, that should all be
And who
taken
oversees
care
the
of.
retirement system?
How much money was that last year that we did not get, that was being billed out?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry,
How
I was
much
asking,
money?
How much did we bill out that we did not get paid?
Yeah, was it about 10,000, was it around $10,000 or thereabouts?
And
Yeah.
there's a large bill this year to one community for over $8,000. I'm probably not going to see a payment for it.
What steps can we take, though, to try to combat it? If it's the law,
The law says our only recourse is small claims court.
So
I don't hire
Which is
anybody else in that
which is
town.
ridiculous.
You're gonna have town council?
Well, especially, for all I know, our town council, that you're gonna find,
Right.
well, you've got town councils who represent multiple communities. I mean, who do you hire?
Steve Venuti duty, and duties
Yeah, I mean,
required?
Duty, duty.
Duties as required?
We're knocking on doors.
Yeah, that'll be fun, I'll go with you, Steve. Let's do that.
I'll give you
That's
our
usually
first stop.
Usually you get one of
I'll know
those
next
big
month,
burly
next week.
deputy collectors.
Is that other town within our same congressional district? I mean, is it the same people or not? Or
It should be done through the cherry
representatives, the
sheet, I
same
think.
people?
Yeah,
I
it should,
agree.
yeah, the
Process
answer should be a cherry sheet, and I
Yeah,
think that
okay.
a community like us that pays its bills is a good community to bring to their legislators' attention, to make it easier for
So will we do that
us to get
then?
our money. We will, yeah.
We need a motion on this to refer it to the financial policy working group.
Okay, ready to go?
Yep.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to refer to the Financial Policies Working Group the following draft policies. 1, CPA appendix to the Financial Management Policy for integrating Community Preservation Act funds into the town's financial policies, procedures, and processes. 2, TIF appendix with proposed tax increment financing guidelines. 3, revisions to the policy on group health and life insurance coverage for active employees and retirees. And 4, retiree health insurance reimbursement policy.
Second?
Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? 6B, policy adoption, revised hiring policy procedures, hiring.
This was introduced at the meeting on December 15th, and so under your procedure, this is the second reading tonight for adoption.
All right. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to adopt the proposed revised hiring policy and procedures document as recommended by the Personnel Board on November 20, 2014, and introduced at the Selectmen's meeting on December 15, 2014.
Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Other business, anything?
You wanted to say something, Joe, about when there was a conflict on a Saturday with a Patriots game, the vice chairman?
We'll look that up in the policy, yeah. It has to be looked up in the policy. The Vice chairman has to be more responsible and take up some of the slack that. You're doing the
I'm
Patriots games.
speechless. I may have been at Gillette Stadium in the parking lot partaking in some festivities. You are correct. I appreciate the Eagle Scout representation of the board
You
here.
get a merit badge.
Yeah, you get a merit badge. And I will be at the AFC Championship game if you, I'll send you videos, and pictures.
Minutes?
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve the minutes from Monday, December 15th, 2014, in room 103.
I'll let you take that because I wasn't here.
You missed them at the end of the...
I can second it, I wasn't here. I can second.
Make sure I was here first time.
Physically, we're here.
Oh, you got it, yeah. And don't we like 6:30 start times?
I love it.
Let's go Ducks.
This spring.
You know,
What's on tonight, Keith? The national championship game.
To accept the minutes? Okay, so moved and seconded for the minutes of, what's, December 15th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching.